Hey everyone, I'm Carolyn. Welcome back to another episode of As I See It. This is my political channel. It's not my RV life channel, so if you clicked on it because you saw my face and you're expecting RV life, that's not what we're going to talk about today. So last night's debate, even though I did the video yesterday and I was mad that CBS wasn't going to fact check, and I wish they would have fact checked in real time. But what they did do, and I'm not sure if this was the moderators just kind of like sticking in some fact checking, but what they did is I felt like a lot of their questions were framed as fact checks. For example, the question about Iran, when they posed the question, they said, well, it was President Trump who actually weakened the arms deal with Iran. So I was really kind of impressed with that right off the bat. And I noticed they did that a couple of times with Vance. Well, you said blah, 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 blah. Of course, they didn't do it enough. But what I really want to talk about today is the debate went exactly as many of us thought it would, right? J.D. Vance was going to lie through his teeth. He was a very smooth, very slick, very polished. I think that the goal was to come off as the more even-keeled, sensible, in control part of the ticket, but he still lied through his teeth. And Walz, on the other hand, fumbled a little bit. I mean, he was Walz, right? He was just like, I'm not perfect. I fumble a little bit. He was really nervous in the beginning, but he held to his talking points. He held to the truth, and he did exactly what I think many of us expected him to do. The thing with J.D. Vance and the thing with the lies is that the more Trump and Vance say something, the more you hear them drill down on a specific point, the bigger lie it is. And specifically what I want to talk about today is how J.D. Vance blamed everything on illegal immigrants or even migrants. And he often referred to them as illegal aliens, which is really dangerous terminology, right? They're not just illegal immigrants, they're aliens, something that invade, something that come from a foreign place and take over and invade. An alien, unless you're E.T., it's usually not for benevolent reasons, right? It's an invasion. And I think he used that word on purpose because it incites more fear in their base, which is exactly what this whole fear-mongering around the border is about. It's about terrifying their base. Much of their base have never been to a border town, have never traveled internationally, have never stepped outside their bubble or their community, which is mostly white, probably mostly Christian or Catholic even, or religious. And so as someone who has traveled across this country and has talked to a lot of different people, and someone who myself kind of got outside of my bubble and where I grew up and moved to San Francisco and was instantly exposed to every nationality, every religion, every sexual orientation, everything you can imagine, it really opened my eyes and opened me up. And this is why they fear education so much, because when we are exposed to more things, we become more liberal. And their whole point then is to fearmonger their base, who haven't been outside of their communities much, and who don't understand a lot of things, but they fear people who don't look like them. And they fear because these people are telling them there is an invasion at the border, so they live in fear that brown criminals from down south are coming to take everything away from them. Murder and rape and pillage and steal their jobs and raise their housing prices and everything. So the more Donald Trump and J.D. Vance say something, the bigger lie it is. And what I want to do in this video is couple of things. I want to put on our critical thinking caps. Let's turn on our common sense and our critical thinking caps and think about this logically. And I'm going to intersperse this critical thinking session with some facts. So J.D. Vance literally blamed everything on migrants, illegal migrants, even legal migrants. Every Everything that is wrong with America is because people are coming here. And they want to do mass deportations. So let's talk about, first of all, housing prices. Housing prices are through the roof, according to Vance, because illegals and migrants are flooding the borders because Kamala Harris opened the border. I mean, he makes it sound like the gates at the border are wide open and people are just piling through every day. As someone who has been across the border many times under the Biden presidency, and as someone who has traveled across the border, across Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, I can tell you firsthand, the borders aren't wide open. That people aren't just flooding across the border willy-nilly. Take it from somebody who has been there. That is a lie. But J.D. Vance wants you to believe that they're flooding across the border and they're the reason you can't afford rent or to buy a house. Let's put our critical thinking skills on for a minute. When's the last time you bought a house or even tried to rent an apartment? What's the first thing they do? When you're trying to get a mortgage, when you're trying to rent an apartment, what is the first thing they do? Any guesses? They run your credit. You have to have a decent credit score to get a mortgage for sure, and even to rent an apartment. Do you think illegal immigrants or even legal migrants from Mexico and South America and Central America who are fleeing the most horrible corruption and cartel violence that you can imagine, who are risking everything and walking and using coyotes to flee with only the shirt on their back and their kids? Do you think they've got a credit score? Come on, think about this. Do you think they have a credit score? And if they don't have a credit score, then how are they able to rent apartments and buy houses? What's another thing that they look at, both when you're trying to rent and when you're trying to buy a house? They want to see pay stubs. I had to show, when we bought the house, gosh, I can't even remember. You have to show pay stubs. So somebody flooded across the border, ran across the border illegally, and they're going to be able to, number one, have a credit score above 750. Number two, have 3 months worth of pay stubs to show. Does that make any sense to you at all? Next, down payment. What does it cost? What do you need? 10% down to buy a house? Say the average housing price is $300,000. So do you really think illegal immigrants just have $30,000 handy to give to a down payment on a house? If they had $30,000 for a house, I think maybe they would have been able to afford to do things legally. They wouldn't have had to flee and rush across the border. They would have been able to buy an airplane ticket, which, by the way, most illegal immigrants who are here came by airplane, and they let their visas lapse. That's a fact. Most illegals here, most people who are here illegally, flew in. So don't you think that if someone was coming from the South and they had $30,000, $40,000 at their disposal, they would have just bought a plane ticket? Rather than rush through the border with their kids in tow, threatening incarceration and getting their kids taken away? Come on, use your critical thinking skills. That's just a lie about the reason that housing is so unaffordable is because of illegal immigrants. And here is one thing you need to know about J.D. Vance in particular, but also Donald Trump. J.D. Vance is bought and paid for by people like Elon Musk and Thiel. He is a puppet. He is the guy who they are going to use to install Project 2025. Project 2025 is all about millionaires and billionaires staying rich and controlling everybody else so that they can stay at the top, have all the power, and suppress the rest of us. So J.D. Vance is just a puppet to continue this oligarchy that is already at the top that some people are trying to at least manage. He's the one who's going to let the oligarchs run away with it all. So when he wants you to believe that the reason housing is so expensive is because of, those illegal immigrants, it's really his rich friends. and real estate speculation and these huge corporations buying up empty houses. And so that and that's really why housing is so expensive. These huge corporations are outbidding every seller, like you and me, or, your kids or grandkids who want to buy a house. They're buying up all the real estate, which means, remember we had that whole conversation about supply and demand? When you buy up all the real estate, you're taking away the supply. Demand is still there, so that's going to raise prices. So these huge corporations are buying all these houses and they're renting them out. They want to keep people enslaved to them forever. They don't want people to own homes because home ownership gives wealth, generational wealth. It's an investment. And if they can steal basically all of the houses away from the average American, the average working American, and make them pay rent for the rest of their lives, they've got them. Cheap labor for the rest of their lives, because they don't want people like you and me to build wealth. So when you hear J.D. Vance and Donald Trump demonizing illegal immigrants, they're doing it to protect their rich friends, because their rich friends are really the ones who are making things more difficult for all of us. So that was lie number one. Illegal immigrants are to blame for the housing prices. Here's another thing. And Tim Walz, of course, they only have so much time. He could have spent the whole night on the defense fact-checking Vance. And like I said yesterday, it would have been a he said, she said. Let the fact-checking happen afterwards. There are a lot of things I wish Walz had said, though. And this is one that really hit me hard because I know from personal experience how this works. J.D. Vance said that part of the reason we have so much gun violence in this country is because, again, open borders and illegal immigrants that are smuggling guns across the border, and that guns are coming from Mexican cartels and flooding into the United States. That's what J.D. Vance said. Here's the truth. Guess where Mexican cartels get their guns? Guess where the Mexican cartels get their guns? From the United States. Because it is so easy to get guns here. I read gun smugglers are known to coerce or pay U.S. residents and citizens to purchase semi-automatic rifles and other firearms from gun shops or gun shows and then transfer them to cartel representatives. This exchange is known as a straw purchase. So again, J.D. Vance was lying, blaming gun violence on immigrants, because he's probably in the pocket of the NRA like every other Republican in the history of the NRA. He wants guns on the street because you know why. They want a civil war. So he's not going to say, yeah, the problem is guns. But what he did is he turned it around and said, the problem is that we've got too many guns because of open borders. I traveled to Baja last year, for those of you who follow me on my RV channel. Going south into Baja from the United States, we had military checkpoints. They stopped us with these armed to the teeth military guys, and they searched our vehicles. And I was curious, what are they searching vehicles for? And of course, a lot of them don't speak English and they're very serious about their jobs, so I did a little research. They were searching our vehicles for guns, because people smuggle guns into Mexico from the United States because it is easier to get guns here. So again, another lie. J.D. Vance blamed all the guns in our streets on Mexican cartels and open borders, when in fact it's exactly the opposite. The United States has such easy access to even semi-automatic weapons that we are supplying the cartels with guns. That's a fact. Drugs. So again, the whole fentanyl thing came up, and he used his mom as an addict, to try to seem human and to try to relate to people who have addicts in their family. I don't buy anything he says. He's just awful. He's dangerous. He's scary. He's too smooth. He's a really good liar, right? He wanted to blame all the fentanyl overdoses on Kamala Harris's policy of wide open borders, which again is a lie. Nobody has wide open borders. Nobody has a policy of wide open borders. Let's remind any new people here or any people who might be on the other side that Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, both parties in Congress tried to pass a border security bill. And Donald Trump stepped in and told Republicans, do not vote for it.
Oh, I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling.
Because if he didn't have your fear to run on, what does he have? He's using your fear to get him what he wants. So he tanked a bill. I mean, if it was really such a threat to the United States and to your safety, why? And if he really cared about you and your safety, why would he step in and say, don't vote for that bill? Because number one, it's not as big of a threat as he says it is. And number two, he's using that to use you, to manipulate you, to lie to you, to keep you scared so that you are so terrified that your fear clouds your good judgment. That's playbook 101 of a dictator. So when J.D. Vance talked about fentanyl overdoses being so high in the United States, and yes, I heard the same study that Walz quoted last night, and fentanyl deaths are actually down. I heard it on NPR, and they can't figure out why. He blamed the open borders, though, for all the fentanyl coming across the border. So do you really think families and children and all the people who are supposedly flooding through the gates of the wide open borders are like packed? Do you think they're carrying backpacks and suitcases full of fentanyl? No. Do you know how fentanyl gets to the United States? 3 guesses. Airplane cargo and express courier. DHL, FedEx. It's sent here through couriers and through air cargo, stashed in the cargo spaces of planes. And you think J.D. Vance doesn't know this? He knows this. He knows this. But yeah, some of it does come across the border in trucks and cars, and they are seizing fentanyl at the border at record rates. You know, those are the facts behind a lot of the lies that J.D. Vance is telling. But also think about it. Let's put our critical thinking caps back on for a minute and think about why people risk everything, including incarceration or getting sent back. Why do you think people risk everything to come to the United States? Do you think they risk everything to come here to commit crimes? Oh, that's the other thing, crime. The fact is, immigrant, especially illegal immigrant crime is extremely low in the United States. Extremely low. Most of the crime committed in the United States are by citizens of the United States. I mean, it's minuscule of the amount of crime, especially violent crimes committed by immigrants, and especially illegal immigrants. And put your thinking cap on again. Think about that. Do you really think that people are fleeing thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles, just to come to the United States to harm people? Do you really, they can harm people in their own country. Why would they come all the way to America to commit crimes? They don't. They come here because they want a better life for themselves and for their children and for their families. They're escaping violence and horrible living conditions and areas where cartels have completely taken over and they don't know if they're going to be shot leaving their house. They want to come somewhere where they can work hard and get the American dream, because that's what we sell internationally. We sell through TV that all you have to do is work hard and you can have everything. That's why they come here. Do you really think someone who risks everything to travel tens of thousands of miles with only the shirt on their back, giving up everything? I mean, people leave families behind. People leave children and parents and sisters and friends behind because they're so desperate. Do you really think they're going to come here and risk getting caught by committing crimes and getting sent back? This is why illegal immigrant crime is so low. They're grateful to be here. They're not going to jeopardize getting caught and getting sent back. I mean, if we could just take the fear out of the equation for just a second, I know you would be able to think clearly and to be rational and to understand that these are human beings who are desperate. Desperate enough to risk everything to come here. And if they are that desperate, do you think they're going to come here and risk getting sent back? They're not. So I want you to remember, whenever you hear J.D. Vance and Donald Trump talk about illegal immigration and the wide open borders, the more they say it, the bigger lie it is. And that was so clear last night when J.D. Vance blamed everything on wide open borders that don't exist, illegal immigrants who aren't doing what he says they're doing. It's just a way to keep you emotionally tied to them. Because if you're not emotionally tied to them, if you're not constantly living in a state of fear, you'll come to your senses and you won't vote for them. That's at least how I see it. How do you see it? Leave your thoughts and comments below. What did you think about the debate? Let me know below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.